Hey guys, welcome back to yet another video on RevAtlas. I'm Sandeep, and in this video we're going to be taking a look at the camera review of the Redmi 9 Prime smartphone. Now before we get this started, please do make sure to hit the subscribe button and also turn on notifications for more videos like this. Now let's begin the video. The Redmi 9 Prime features a primary 13-megapixel camera with f2.2 aperture, a secondary ultra-wide angle camera with the same aperture and 8 megapixels of resolution, a macro 5-megapixel camera and a 2-megapixel depth sensor as well. The Redmi 9 Prime is quick to lock focus, you have good white balance as well as natural looking colors, and the overall dynamic range is also pretty good. Now you will get added dynamic range if you actually use the HDR mode, and we would suggest turning it on whenever possible in order to get better looking photos. In terms of sharpness and detail, this is actually very good as well, and while it can't compete with the 64 megapixel sensors or even match the 48 megapixel sensors in some situations, it still does go over and above what you expect from a 13 megapixel sensor in this particular price range. Zooming in will reveal some noise as well as some softness to the image, but then again these are perfectly acceptable for a device in this particular price range. Coming to the ultra-wide angle camera, it captures a much more dramatic field of view, but the images are both softer as well as has less sharpness and detail, and also has slightly more noise compared to the regular camera. Overall, while the saturation is still kept in check, the tonality of the images seem to be a bit warmer than the primary camera, but still they've done their best to minimize the disparity between the primary and ultra-wide angle cameras. In terms of night mode, I was worried about the Redmi 9 Prime because of two main reasons. Number one, the aperture of f2.2 is actually much smaller than most other camera phones even in this segment, and considering that the sensor is not as large as other 48 megapixel or 64 megapixel sensors, I didn't expect it to be all that good, and even the lack of night mode didn't help either. However, when I looked at the images overall, it seemed pretty decent performing considering those two other parameters that were missing. But the overall image is definitely decent with good amount of detail and sharpness, and I would suggest using HDR mode here as well because you get a more decently exposed frame, albeit with higher but acceptable noise levels. In terms of the portrait mode, we were actually very surprised with how the images turned out, considering this has excellent edge detection, great sharpness on the portion in focus, and overall looks really good and can even give competitors that are 2 or 3 times the cost a run for their money. Another great addition is the cinematic portrait feature that's available both for the front and rear cameras on MIUI devices, and we are quite pleased with the results that we got from that on the Redmi 9 Prime as well. And while we are on the topic of features, I wanted to talk about the sky replacement tool, which is basically a tool in the editor that you can choose after capturing the image. And most days when I was capturing photos, it was quite gloomy and dark, but sky replacement can actually give you a great sense of freshness to your image, and it also helps to overall change the tonality of the image and not just replace the sky, which actually makes it look more natural. I hope that more manufacturers bring this sort of feature to their smartphones. We're quite happy that Xiaomi has actually given a 5-megapixel macro camera with the Redmi 9 Prime, considering that the 2-megapixel unit even on the Redmi Note 9 was not all that great, but in this one the performance is actually pretty good and you can even record full HD videos with the same. The front-facing camera is an 8-megapixel f2 unit, and in terms of image quality it's excellent with great sharpness and overall good dynamic range. Now while the performance is great during daylight situations and well-lit conditions, the issue happens mainly in low light where the camera is prone to shakes and creating a blurry image because it has to go for a longer exposure. The other issue is in terms of portrait mode, which works very well when it does, but in some situations due to the lack of dynamic range because of HDR being not applied here, it actually causes blown out highlights, which in my case also results in portions of my head being eaten into by the highlights itself and also resulting in faulty edge detection. It would also help if Xiaomi toned down the contrast for the front-facing camera portrait mode. In terms of videos, you can record 1080p 30fps videos with the primary camera, the ultra-wide angle camera, the front-facing camera, as well as the macro camera. Now the macro camera quality is quite good and much better than any of the other macro cameras we have out there, but in terms of the other cameras, quality is decent. And due to the lack of EIS and the overall bitrate, it's not all that impressive, but then again you can't expect much more at this particular price point. Hey guys, this is a front-facing camera on the Redmi 9 Prime capturing 1080p 30fps video. Let me know what you guys think about the overall sharpness, dynamic range, how well it's become my voice in this scenario.
and the stabilization itself.
Overall, the Redmi 9 Prime actually surprised us with the kind of image quality that it offers. It takes excellent portraits, has great dynamic range and sharpness, has good macro camera, and also does very good selfies in good lighting conditions. And that makes it one of the best contenders under 10,000 rupees in terms of camera performance. If you have any questions, do let us know in the comment section below. Thanks for watching this video. Please don't forget to hit the subscribe button. See you again in the next one.